Hey guys, this is Mikro. The New World League draft just concluded as of last night, and I wanted to kind of give my thoughts on the whole thing, talk about who I thought were winners, who I thought were losers, and overall what people drafted towards. In terms of like who drafted for what, I think it's very clear that Grav Mail drafted for a heavy main ball win. We've seen how that has gone on EU Wars. This is a lot of like egoed leadership. It very much shows like an egoed style. You can see from EU Wars how the ball diff doesn't even matter at a certain point if your healers are getting farmed, and that's the spot where I think this team is going to struggle. But their ball is very, very strong on paper. Guangzhou Goats, I think, went for in general value picks, but I wouldn't say that there's a super core identity to this team. It looks like fairly well balanced, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But I don't know what this team is going to be playing for overall. I think it's like a decent team, but I don't think there's like a certain role that's going to kind of carry this team as a whole, and that's the part where I get concerned about them. That being said, I think they had the most people in VC, and they have like the best community that I've seen so far, of like heard of. So I think that will and help them a lot. But from looking at this roster at a high level, I'm not exactly sure why some of the people got picked when they did, and I think they missed out on a lot of like kind of carry star players, from in my opinion. Cookout, I think they went for basically every star player they can get, but I think that some of these star players don't live up to the hype of the draft position that they were drafted. To be honest, I don't want to call out names because that's going to be kind of toxic, but there are people in here that I think were good at one point, and then I don't believe are as impactful as they were before. That being said, they have some good names in here. I'm not exactly sure to call one person out. I'm not exactly sure how Tripod goes before OD does. I think OD is a very, very good boat in the game. And then you have Ling Ling, which we've seen how that's gone in EU. So I don't really see like this draft order, but I think overall, Cookout did a pretty good job with this draft. Joe Team Sticks, I think we came out on top personally. We got some really, really big snipes. No team is going to really hold a candle to Joe Team Six's point team. It's not even going to be close. Ball player wise, we have a lot of underrated players. I think this team is honestly the top end is built mostly out of retired players slash value picks that are coming back that a lot of people haven't heard of, but happen to be very, very good at the game if you've actually played versus them. I feel like we got a lot of steals at this draft. I want to go into like the mindset at the end of this, but overall, I feel like we came out on top. I feel like every company feels like they came out on top though, so that it feels very, very good to me, and I'm very happy to be here. The other thing I kind of want to address early is I went round two. I think most people were saying I should have gone later. I still firmly believe I was a round two worthy pick, but the other thing that I want to bring up that I don't think a lot of people realize is I've been told by three other companies that I was their round three pick. So even if I went round two and if that was a round early, I was set to go to round three for like three different companies, apparently. So I don't think this was much of an exaggeration for Joe Team 6 to lock me in a round earlier than other people. But that being said, if they were a little bit greedier, they had the potential to pick up like another like really, really good melee if they wanted to, but they valued the shot calling leadership overall, and that's where Joe Team 6 draft has kind of come in. So the top end is mostly IGLs and a few like standout players, and then the mid end is value picks, and then the bottom end is kind of just based off of odds, to be honest. In terms of ex Mexico, I think this is actually a surprisingly good draft. At first, I was thinking that this was not a great draft, and then I realized who some of these players were because some of them haven't played the game in a decent amount of time. And those players that they got that hadn't played in the game amount of time are very, very, very good players. And their top end is also really good, and they have a good kill squad. So I think Mexico overall did very, very well with this draft. I think that they missed very, very heavily on certain picks, though. Everyone has brought up JBL. I feel bad for hammering on JBL, but JBL was benched when he last quit the game for a reason, and he went round five, which is criminal in my opinion. I think that he was like like you probably could have waited on JBL till round like 30, and he probably would not have been picked, and he could have picked him up then. It's but I think other people would say a similar thing for me, but that I think most people would also agree that JBL went way too early. Aspara went very, very heavy in terms of getting good melee. Num and Mendrizzle are very, very good melee. And then they locked in a basically good kill squad, good healers for the kill squad, and that was their entire strategy. So they're banking off winning off like a hard kill squad diff, and that their healers kind of carrying them to victory. In my opinion, I don't think healers are as heavy as a carry as they think. and they are going to lack everywhere else in the army. And typically, if you don't have a good enough ball, you don't have a good enough kind of core, your team just falls apart. And the thing with the Aspara is they're going to be against the clock. If their kill squad can win, they will feast on every other team. If their kill squad can't win, they will just straight up lose, in my opinion. But overall, I think they have a very solid identity, and it's kind of the meta identity at the current meta for the PvP. So we'll see if that kind of meta holds through for like the month-long draft and in the playoffs. And assuming it does, I think that they overall came out very, very ahead. Cancun, to put it lightly, I think they drafted like 10 to 15 TOS risks, and basically if you violate TOS, you just get banned from the draft, and I think that is gonna hurt their team significantly. And I've already heard of some people already violating TOS on that team, so I don't think this team is gonna go anywhere, to be honest. But if you took out the TOS aspect, I think their draft is overall pretty valuable overall. But they drafted like probably 10 to 15 players that are just inherent risks of just not being able to play the game due to them saying something stupid or doing something stupid in game. So that's the part where I worry about Cancun. That being said, their top end is I think is solid. Their mid end is pretty good as well. And overall, I think that if their players remain civil, they will do well. But I'm not sure if those players will remain civil. Audacity, I think, is kind of what everyone thinks is the big loser of the draft. To be honest, it seemed like a lot of people for this team kind of got slotted because they knew people slash kind of friend picks, because a lot of the slots didn't really make sense at the time. We, as a like from a Joe Team 6 perspective, looked through a ton of VODs. Like I think Optical covered like almost 300 healer VODs alone, and in total, I think Joe Team 6 went through like 800 to 1,000 VODs and basically put a rating next to every single VOD that was present. We tried to click on everything that was a VOD. Sometimes were no VODs, so like we basically went through everything, gave everyone a rating, and drafted mostly off of that, which is why this mid section is mostly value picks. But Audacity, I think that they missed the ball completely, and at a certain point, we're just kind of relying off people that they knew, and I think that's going to hurt them in the long run. And I expect this team to go dead last, if I'm going to be honest. Criminals, everyone has said this. I think it's pretty agreeable. Their top three, I think, is solid, and then after that, they hard fell off. Also, I don't know how you go Trox over Partial Victor. Personally, Troxers could be very good in this environment, but if Troxer gets touched at all, the dude falls over. I kill him as a point tank half the time, and that is kind of crazy to me. But I think they, overall, I would say are the second loser of the draft, but they had a really, really good start. It just fell off really quickly. I'm not sure if they put in the work to look at the VODs or not. But I think that they have a chance to do well because they got some underrated players from West, and I think some of those players are pretty good. Rasputin, I imagine, had a big role in that, and they could do well enough because their mid to bottom end of their company, I think, is good, but their top end, I think that they missed on heavily. So overall, if I were to like kind of put it in a tier list, this is what I would say. Joe Team 6, kind of biased because it's helped the draft a lot, but I think we came out on top, and the reason why we came out on top is at a very early point, we just started going for value picks. And when you go for value picks, you just end up with like an overall like very good roster. We locked in the identity, we locked in the leadership, and then after that, it was just okay, who should have gotten picked like 2 to 5 rounds ago, and we would just go for that player. And we basically did that for the vast majority of the draft. When we got to the end, that got a little bit harder, to be honest. We did look at every VOD, so we had a rating next to every VOD, and when the ratings were lower, it got very tricky because at a certain point we were debating between going for a player with a lower rating or going for a player with no VOD and just taking a risk on them, just off of people that vouched for them that were in the company. So that was a little bit tricky. But overall, I think that our early to mid draft strategy was really good. It's just once we got around to pick 70, 75, that's when stuff started to get a little bit hairy for us. Or maybe even 60, to be honest. Like we did well at the beginning, did well in the middle, and then towards the end, we're like, I'm not sure uh, if these players will be good enough or not, but we picked people that we generally thought were positive and had the ability to improve off of the VODs that we saw, and kind of went for the people that had the easiest mistakes to fix. Espada, I think, is also on top because Kill Squad just feasts in this kind of environment, and they have the strongest Kill Squad out of any company. So I think they have a very clear identity, what they want to play for, and that will help them a lot. I don't know if that identity is particularly good on attack, to be honest. Kill Squad in Fort tends to struggle a lot. I imagine that they'll get into Fort, but I don't know how well they'll do outside of that. But from an outside point perspective, on defense, I could see this team scoring a lot of points and doing well there. Grab Auto Mail, just very, very good ball. It's just a classic strategy from like that kind of leadership. Think that they'll just do well overall because they have a good ball. If a team does not have a clear identity, I think Grab Auto Mail will just inherently win because they will just get ball diffed. But for teams that have identities, I think that their strategy could be exposed because the ball diff idea is sort of an old concept at this point, in my opinion, based off the EU wars where EGOT has basically gotten fort camped by top EU companies because they're still playing for a ball diff and they don't really have a kill squad there or like a very competent kill squad, and they drafted accordingly to that. Still have a good ball, don't have really a good kill squad. We'll see how that goes. Guangzhou Goats I have next because I think they have a really, really good community. They'll bring people up. They're overall a very balanced company. I just don't see the identity aspect of them that was kind of missing. Mexico has a really, really good kill squad, like top end wise, on terms of players that will feast. But the thing from my perspective is when you draft players like Tufert and Obad, from this kind of war perspective, if you just mark Tufert and Obad with one player 1-1 on some really annoying toxic build and just tell that player, hey, your entire job is just to mark Tufert and Obad wherever they go, I don't think Tufert and Obad will get to play the game. I don't think they'll inherently get value. And that kind of disruptor slash a little bit tankier kill squad inherently is a little bit better than the builds that they run. That being said, very, very good players, very solid draft for them. I expect them to do pretty well. Cancun, if their players don't get TOS, I would put them at C tier. Their players get TOS, they are instantly down to F tier, and I believe they're starting to get TOS. They're violating terms of service for the event, so I don't expect Cancun to do super hot, but I don't think they'll do terribly. Cookout, they had overall some really big names. I just don't believe that all those big names live up to the hype that they used to, personally. But if those big names do live up to the hype, then I think that they'll jump up to like kind of a B tier. It's just they took a lot of risk on people that hadn't played the game, don't currently play the game, and are kind of coming back, but weren't. But I don't think that those players were carry players before, and I don't think that they're going to be carry players now. Criminals, I think their late draft was insane, but their early draft was weaker. And because of that, I don't expect them to do super, super hot. That being said, usually companies are defined by their bottom 25, not their top 25. I'm just not sure if their top 25 is good enough compared to other companies' top 25s to where they will hold their own. I think that this team has the potential to get walked over, and I think they have the potential to not have the kind of leadership from the classes that you need to train people to become better players in the long run. Audacity, I think this is the team that most people think did the weakest. To put it lightly, Audacity, I think, kind of friend picked for the most part. They had a couple like very good picks for certain spots in the draft, but I think they overall missed more than they hit, and that's going to hurt them a lot. In terms of like our mindset from the draft, from like Joe Team 6 when I got picked, it was a very, very clear we need to get the leadership in, and then we need to go for value picks. Like there's people on here that violate that. Like Pakuk is like a player that should feast in this kind of environment, so he was just picked early because we thought that he would inherently pop off because it's the sort of environment that Pakuk is kind of meant for. He's kind of a pug stomper character, and this is kind of one of those environments. Kilosh was locked in early for like an IGL aspect, and then we realized he didn't want to IGL, so that was kind of a mistake on our part. We wanted Animatics. They took Animatics right before us, kind of panicked, and then went to Kilosh. After that, we realized we needed to have a second pick ready, and then those mistakes stopped happening. So that was kind of a mistake on our part, but I don't think Kilosh is a bad player, and that he will kind of step up and rise to the occasion like he has in the past if he puts the time into the game, which is kind of to be determined, but that was the mindset behind that. And then basically after this point, after we got Kilosh, all of these were just value picks. Like Mystery Black, like just insane player. Rylock, like insane player. Isaac, insane player. Sape, I don't know how you go this late in the draft. Puma, I don't know how you go late in this draft. Jordan, I don't know how you go late in this draft. Rhett and Seawalkie are just very good melee. At this point, we realized that we didn't really have a lot of healers, and Op literally went through every single healer VOD, had a rating next to every healer and notes. So we just kind of went off of that, and that's where all these healers came from. think a lot of people are like, hey, Joe Team 6 is drafting like all the hero healers. It is what up that was good based off looking at VODs, and I tend to agree with them that these are all like very, very good healers that we got for the most part for relative to people like in the draft. Like we're kind of going for value picks, and we thought some of these people should have been picked way earlier, but we're not. Asafe is just insane. He had not been playing the game in a long time. I saw him in OPR yesterday. He was feasting. Eben, just a really good player. Odosu is like very underrated, grabby, underrated, like pretty good melee. Darknut is just really good. I don't know how he goes this late in the draft. He's just really good. The only weird thing with Darknut that we got told later on, right about here, was that he broke his finger, but apparently it's gonna be back to normal by the time the draft starts. So we started panicking, drafting like probably more bows than we should have. But we think that it will come around and it will still be fine for us because the meta may favor that kind of style a little bit more, even though Bo was nerfed to a degree. And then basically after this point, just really good value picks. Farley, I think, as you said, was like really, really good. Lauren, just really good healer. We've had like 3 or 4 people come in for trade offers for Lauren. We think Lauren's a really, really good player, and we would like to hold on to her, but there was a trade offer that was worth it, then we would definitely like consider it if she wanted to go to that team. But she's just like a really, really good underrated player. I don't know how she goes this late in the draft. Believe, just solid. Lengod, that was my pick. uh, I think everyone did a disservice to SNS as a whole. This buff is the biggest SNS buff I've seen in a very long time. I think a lot of people took it as, hey, SNS is like very, very easy to play, but there was a very, very big skill difference between top end SNS and mid SNS, and Lengod should have gone, in my opinion, before I would say round 5. I think anything after that is pretty criminal for not picking up a point tank that is that much of a differential compared to any other point tank in NA. Like me going this early, I think is about accurate. Len guy going a little bit later, I think is about accurate because he's IGL wise a little bit worse, but is a very, very competent player. Like he is right up there, and he slips to round 25. So that was just a steal for us. We figure even if we have 2 SNSs, we'll find something to make it work because he is that good of a player, and we just know that we'll always SNF diff and have a point differential over every other team because we have the 2 best SNSs in the game. And then basically after this point, it was just value pick, value pick, value pick, value pick, pointing out some people. Wild, very underrated old player, was like best in slot back in the day. Ant J-Chap, how they slipped this late, I don't know. That was great to pick up. Aeonic, very sleeper shot caller. He used to be a shot caller. He's a very good shot caller when he played. We realized that at a certain point when Kilosh said, hey, I don't actually want to IGL, it was like, oh, maybe we should start thinking about callers. We're thinking Aeonic. I think at one point we thought about a shot caller that should go unmentioned, but we thought would TOS himself, so we did not pick up. So he got picked up. Purdy's a great player. I'm excited to work with him. Arrow used to play with us. That was kind of a friend pick, to be honest, but when he played, he was good. He's a good Valorant player now. We hope that he's still good at the game. And then basically after this point was just going off of the actual ratings that we had from looking at VODs. So everything in here, VODs from us. We're just looking at everything that we can, writing ratings. Now we're going to actually be giving feedback to players. And basically, everyone in this company kind of put the time and work into that. I didn't put as much time and work as the leadership in Joe Team 6, but Imp went through hundreds of odds, Dex went through hundreds of odds, Optical went through hundreds of odds. I think Optical had the record overall, but every player that basically signed up, got a rating, and we have those ratings internally, and they probably won't get shared because that will just start drama, but that was how Joe Team 6 kind of went about this draft. And let me know if you guys have any questions. Really cool event from Apples, from AGS to support this, and really excited for the next couple of weeks, and I'll see you guys in the next video.